And we'll continue with The House Like a Lotus by Madeleine L'Engle. The humid heat and the rhythm of the car eased my thoughts, and I was dozing when Carisse said, "We are here." I opened my eyes as we drove through the gates of golden stone, and we were at the conference center. It was much bigger than Osias Lucas, not nestled in a cup of a hill, not nestled in a cup in the hill, but perched on the side of a mountain. We entered a great dusty courtyard surrounded by a cloister. There was a 2-story building, a tallish rectangle, forming part of the wall to our right, with arched doors and windows with eyebrow-like carvings over them. Carisse drew up in front of it. "Now the village is becoming a resort. The monastery grounds are not as quiet as they used to be. Tourists come to see the church and the fountain house, and tend to wander all over." I sat up and looked around at the gracious arches of the cloister, with glimmers of sun on sea sparkling in the distance. Carisse continued, "This is a delight to us that the village church is within the monastery grounds. See just ahead of us the tall bell tower. You will see weddings and funerals and baptisms. The village is still small enough so that its life goes on, as it has done for centuries, and we who come here for conferences are, as it were, tourist attractions to the villagers. We'll be a strange group, but Osaya theologians are friendly and welcoming. Ah, here comes Noreen." His face lit up. A young Chinese woman, tiny and delicate, came hurrying to greet us, shook my hand with a firm grip, insisted on getting my suitcase out of the trunk, while I stood awkwardly by, towering over her. "Noreen Fongmar, Polly O'Keefe," Carisse introduced us. "Noreen is one of my colleagues in London and is associate director of this conference." "I am from Hong Kong," Noreen said, "but lately I've spent more time in England than at home. Follow me," she set off at a rapid pace. I hoisted the shoulder bag and followed her across the dusty compound, almost having to run to keep up, despite my much longer legs. We went past the church and then veered to our left, to the center of the grounds, where there was a small octagonal stone building with open arched sides and a domed roof. "The fountain here," Noreen said, "very old. The only new building in the center of the guest house, and it is the old style and doesn't stick out like a sore thumb." We went along a narrow path, with roses blooming on either side, and the air smelled of roses and salt wind. The only roses on Benestead Island were at Bouillere, and grew there because the gardener was constantly watering and tending them. Noreen headed for a large white building with a red-tiled roof, the blinding white of the stucco walls muted by flowering vines. Bougainvillea I recognized, and oleander, but the other flowers were new to me. It was much hotter on Cyprus than it had been in Greece, and I could feel sweat trickling down my legs. I'm used to heat. Even so, it was hot. Noreen beckoned me imperiously, and I hurried to catch up. She opened a door leading to a long corridor. Over her shoulder, she said, "Your roommate is from Zimbabwe. She's the youngest of the women delegates. And we thought you'd enjoy each other, but you'll have the room to yourself the next few days." She spoke with a crisp English accent, more fluently than Carisse, whose words came slowly, thoughtfully. She was dressed in denim skirt and white shirt that exuded efficiency. She opened the next-to-last door on the left, which led to a pleasant room with twin beds, 2 desks with shelves for books, and 2 narrow chests of drawers. It was what I imagined a college dorm would be like, except for the dim bars of light on the floor filtering through the closed shutters, which spoke of the tropics. Noreen heaved my bag onto one of the beds and opened the shutters. The windows were already wide open. I followed her onto a balcony which looked across terraced gardens to the Mediterranean Sea. It was different from Greece, but equally glorious. "You like it?" "It's absolutely lovely," she beamed at me, then glanced into the room. "See, you have been sent coals to Newcastle." Not understanding, I looked into the room and saw a vase of hothouse flowers on the desk by the window. A small white envelope was clipped to one of the stems. I opened it and pulled out a card and read, "Just so you won't forget me, Zachary." I could feel myself blushing. Nobody had ever sent me flowers before. The ones at the King George had come from the management and didn't count. I put my face down to sniff them to hide my hot cheeks. Noreen laughed. "It seems that someone likes you." "It seems that someone likes you." I may call you Polyhymnia? You will call me Noreen? I'd love to call you Noreen, but call me Polly, please. Polly with 2 L's. But Polyhymnia is a Greek name, and she was one of the Muses. I know, but plain Polly takes a lot less explaining. As you like. She sounded disappointed. Since you are here first, you will have the choice of bed, desk, chest. Would you like the window side? It was hardly a question. Fortunately, I would like the window side. Thank you. She looked down at the beds, which were unmade, showing mattresses with gray and white ticking. A bed pad, sheets, pillowcases, towel, face cloth were in a neat pile in the center of each bed. It will be very helpful, Polly, if you will make the beds. Most of the delegates have been traveling for many hours and will be very tired. I can't say that making the bed is my favorite job in the world, but I'm certainly used to it. I've done it often enough at home, particularly before the little kids were old enough to do their own. Of course, I'll be glad to, I said. Noreen handed me a key on a leather thong. This is the master key. We keep the rooms locked because sometimes the tourists come snooping around, not realizing that this is a dormitory. They are not dangerous, only a nuisance, particularly those who go in for topless bathing. It upsets the villagers. I nodded. If you're tired, don't try to make all the beds this afternoon, just a few. You can finish tomorrow or the next day. We are sorry it is so unreasonably hot. This heat wave began today. We hope it will break before the delegates arrive. She pulled open a desk drawer, and there was a box of matches and a mosquito coil. Noreen started to explain, but I told her I knew all about mosquito coils, even with screens everywhere. The little kids are constantly running in and out, so we have to use mosquito coils a lot. Okie dokie, that's good. You can help me explain them to the delegates. This heat has brought the insects out, the night ones especially. Even with the coil, you will have to pull the shutters to at night. She snapped on a fan that was on the inner desk. It helps a little. When you are in your room, you can leave the door open for cross drafts. Now, I go for my siesta. The staff will have a meeting at 5 o'clock this afternoon before the evening meal. I will come for you to show you the way. Thank you. As briskly as she had come in, she left, and I could hear her clip-clopping along the tile floor of the long corridor. I moved back to the desk with the bouquet of flowers from a florist. Even if Noreen was right, and sending flowers to a flower-filled place like Osayathiola was coals to Newcastle, I was thrilled with them. I checked to see that they had enough water and moved the vase so that they would not get the direct heat of the sun. Then I looked around the room. There was an open closet near the entrance, and on the shelf above it were gray wool blankets. I doubted that we need them unless the weather changed radically. There were 4 wire hangers on the rod, and I was glad Max had told me to bring hangers of my own. You'll have plenty at the King George, but not in Osayathiola unless I'm very much mistaken. The sun was streaming into the room from the balcony, which ran the length of the building, with high stucco dividers between each room for privacy. There were 2 folding canvas chairs leaning against the wall, and I opened one and stretched out. I looked appreciatively at the view across terraces, planted with vegetables and vines, the windmills turning in the breeze, and then my gaze traveled on to the sparkling of the sea below. It was too hot to stay out in the sun for long, so I went back into the room, sniffed the fragrance of Zachary's flowers, and then unpacked, putting my notebook on the desk nearest the window, my books on the shelf, my underclothes in one of the chests of drawers, hanging my clothes in my half of the closet, leaving the 4 wire hangers for my roommate from Zimbabwe. Once I was completely unpacked, I made up the 2 beds in my room. Then I took the master key and went into the hall and opened the door of the room next to mine. It was stiflingly hot. I opened the windows while I made the beds. By the time I had done that room and 2 others down the hall, I was dripping with sweat. I decided that in this heat, 4 rooms, 8 beds were enough for a while. I felt suddenly very lonely, and at the same time I was grateful that I was going to have these first few days in the room by myself. I've never had a roommate. Mother says there are so many of us, it's important that we each have our own room, even if it's no more than a cubicle. I opened my notebook and started to describe the room and its view, to paint in words the conference center of sun-gilded stone and ancient buildings. Since the notebook was for school, I didn't mention Zachary's flowers. I wrote about Karis, Kumar, Krishna Ghose, with his gentle tan face, with the long lines moving down from his eyes, and the smile that belied the sadness. Why wouldn't he be sad, seeing his family shot and killed? He hadn't pushed me to talk on the drive from Larnaca, and the silences between us had been good silences. I described Noreen Fong Mar from Hong Kong, tiny and bossy. Caris wasn't bossy at all, so perhaps he needed an assistant who was. Caris was quiet. There was no static. Noreen was considerable static. She was not calm inside like Caris. I wasn't either. Miss Zalotsky, I thought, was going to enjoy my notebook. And if it hadn't been for Max, Miss Zalotsky and I would never have become friends. I shut the notebook. I was as hot as though I were at home. My fingers were making smudges on the paper. I went back to the balcony. There were no screens, just the long windows and the wooden shutters. I pulled the deck chair into the shade of the divider and stretched out. The light breeze from the sea and the morning air from the fan in the room met and blew across me. I slid into sleep, and we'll pause there.